What's up, world? Wearing these headphones today. I feel like they're less likely to give me brain cancer. Walking around the park, decided I'm going to share with you 5 useful pieces of information. There's enough crap out there, so I'm going to give you some solid advice on how to overcome injuries. Your body sounds cliche, but it is a temple, right? And as someone that has been through many injuries, I can say that I've had a lot of experience overcoming these injuries, from getting into bicycle accidents, motorcycle accidents. Fortunately, that wasn't serious. Car accidents. There's a whole bunch of random things. Power tools. Um, a rib from a baseball getting driven in there. That was a pitcher. But anyways, I would say the most common injuries, which is something I'm actually dealing with right now, and you can see signs of it, especially if you've experienced it before. Plantar fasciitis, which is really a fancy name for like what feels like a bruised heel. And I'm also going to talk about how foot injuries are some of the most difficult to get over. And sometimes we have to change the way we walk. Look at this. Got the landing gear down. So plantar fasciitis, it feels like a bruised heel, and you can get it from being too much of a heel striker. Your calf gets too tight, the arch gets too tight, or your shin muscle gets too weak. All those will lead to a collapsed arch, especially if you're doing a lot of standing in a day. You experience atrophy in those muscles. And so what ends up happening is you'll be fit, but you'll just stop doing something, right? And that's what your body's adapted to have been doing at a high intensity. And when you suddenly stop doing something, it's very easy for people to get injured. The opposite is true. When you first start to do something and your intensity is too high. An interesting nuance of listening to your body getting over an injury is I noticed it has 3 to 5 cycles. Of course, the first thing is denial. Here's another one. First one is denial. Then they don't protect it, and so it gets injured worse. And then it gets so bad that it decommissions people. And after it decommissions you, then you're out of your workout. And then that further feeds in on itself, and the atrophy in the muscle in your joints deteriorate even faster. And the next thing you know, you're basically bedridden in pain. You wake up, you go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, forget you have an injury, and you're about to collapse on the floor. Walking is kind of important, don't you think? And so one thing I know that I don't see a lot of people doing is, how do you get over a leg injury? At Nationals, so 2016 or 17, my foot got sucked into the wheel and the spokes. And basically it peeled the ball of my foot off, and it was flapping off. Luckily, it didn't hit any bone. I had to yank my foot over, throw my bike over, and then while my foot's gushing blood, throw myself over, and then all the pedestrians and stuff. And actually, I just stayed one night there and then drove back with the injury. That was crazy. Luckily, this person sewed it up at the race. It was the first time sewing something. And I gave them authorization and released all liability from them, because I said, I'm not going to hospital. I'm sewing it up right here. They tried shooting in an anesthetic. It was their first time. They didn't know how to do it. So I just told them to sew it up, X pattern, try to look like, I don't know, 7 to 10. And that's what they did. And I had to do it with nothing. And I don't know if you know this, but the ball of your foot is some of the thickest skin on your whole body, if not the thickest skin. So her trying to get a needle through the bottom of my foot skin, where the ball of my foot had been peeled back from getting sucked into the wheel and the bicycle spokes basically slicing it and then jamming my foot in. Yeah, that was kind of painful. But you know what was more painful? Getting that motherfucker sewn up, right? Especially by someone who didn't really know what they were doing. Oh, excruciating. But anyways, overcoming the injury is where things really get tricky. And there's a great ending to that story after I tell you about my injury. Screw it, I'll tell you now. I actually set the record for the Boulder Beer Mile. I believe it was 5 minutes, 47 seconds, drinking 4 beers and running a mile. But there was like 3 months of that nationals accident where the bottom of my foot got peeled off like a grater slicing a tomato and had to get sewn back on. Luckily it didn't get all the way, it was just flapping. And so obviously the first part was keeping it clean, and I couldn't walk at all. I'm completely bedridden, except for when I just, hop over to the toilet or something. And that part sucks. At the time, I was married, so I did have wonderful help, but it still doesn't change the fact that you got a very weird injury that ended up making it so you couldn't walk. And then as you let everything atrophy, your back gets thrown out. And so you have a thrown out back and under a really strong opposite leg. And when you start walking like that, it's going to throw off the rest of your body. So you seize up and you start to bloat. And, oh, here's another one. It's going to go right over me, airplane time. San Diego Airport. Here we go, right over us. Let's get this guy. So after the initial swell and shock period, which lasts 2 to 3 days, you need to start, just make sure it's clean. Take out the stitches. Maybe it doesn't include stitches, maybe it's a dislocation or an overuse. And so what you end up having to do is rehab. That's where swimming really comes in. You swim. If you pull out resistance bands and somehow utilize that point of origin, and it's the amazing thing without resistance bands, I don't think workouts the injury just gets worse. You have to implement some type of stable instability and exponential resistance, like resistance bands, because the further you stretch it, the more exponential kinetic energy it wants to pull back, which is different than you lifting a 25-pound dumbbell. And you do it to where it's uncomfortable. And I'm a believer that discomfort is not pain. Discomfort leads to long-term healing. And when you have a blunt force, or in my case, the bike accident, where I talk about the bottom of my foot, you go through the shock period, you go through your exercises that need to be balancing on one foot, right? And opening those toes, trusting your big toe. But you need to start putting more pressure on it. Maybe like when I did that, I wasn't even able to put pressure on the ball of my foot for like 9 to 10 days. And so I don't think everybody's going to have the bottom of their foot ripped off. So they might be able to start balancing on one leg a little bit sooner. But I remember I had to start doing all the resistance band stuff, or that's what I did. But this time I didn't. I'm a construction dude. I've lost a lot of fitness, but I've gained a lot of strength and size. It's almost like I changed my philosophy and body type. But back then, I was racing semi-pro as a triathlete. Oh, we got another helicopter here. All right. So when I was finally starting to get rid of that pain, because it makes you walk different, and so you have to continue to do rehab all up and down your body. So you can't just try to treat the one area. You're going to need to do ab exercises that fix your back, You're going to need to do side because your body seizes up and gets tense, and you're more likely to get an injury somewhere else. So you instantly have to drop intensity, otherwise you make it a lot worse. So once you finally go through that process, I started getting in the water, and it hurt to put pressure on the ball of my foot. It almost felt like there was a needle stabbing me in the bottom of the foot. And I would just, one day, I think I was 3-4 days in of just not trusting it, but my back wasn't getting any better. So I knew I had to try something. As I got in the pool, I just started walking equal like that. And every time I would get on the ball of my foot, man, it would feel like a knife was stabbing me. But then after I zoned it out, the pain actually started to subside. Then it just kind of felt like a pebble in my shoe. And then within 2 days of that, there was almost a blister that started to evolve on the flap that was still there, that was connected by, like, if it was ripped off in a circle, was still connected by like 30%. So it ended up pushing an additional debris that we didn't get out of my skin. Thank the you-know-what. Thank God. It's important to know that you got to clean your wounds before you sew them up. We took some water with saline, I believe it was. It's got like the same consistency as the plasma in our body. We took this syringe and sprayed it a few times, but we didn't really open it up, the flap, and dig everything out. And obviously the flap is the flap because the spokes dug in deep enough. So it probably dragged, grease with it. It was really just a small little black piece of something, almost like a little shard of obsidian or something. You know what I mean? But so you go through that, and then finally you deal with basically trying new things that are going to help you recover even faster. Like trusting into the pain at a gradual, controlled level, and really determine that it's just discomfort and that it's actually making you stronger. And I guess that's the moral of the story, is if you're dealing with a foot injury, clean it. You're not going to do anything for a few days. Work the whole body because the rest of the system's going to get tight. Probably going to throw out your back. And then you have to put in focused effort on resistance bands and balance. And then try to get in a pool and walk normal and twist your ankle and that kind of thing. And sure enough, like 2 weeks after I was able to walk on my foot, I ended up going to the track and just opening up some strides, and they felt really good. I had actually gotten a new pair of shoes, and it went well. I kept it at like 60%, and then I kept all my workouts at around 60, 70%, and then the week leading up, I just threw in some bursts, like 60-second at 9 on rate of perceived exertion on the track, and I would drink a beer during dinner to kind of get my body accustomed to it, which is dangerous too, because you're trying to train for the Boulder Beer Mile, but I never did while running the track. And so then I showed up to the Boulder Beer Mile, and I had done this event a couple years in the past. I lost to Alex Lieferman. He's a professional triathlete the year before. But then, sure enough, this event, there was a couple of professional runners in there. But I think my secret was going out fast, strong, yet conservative, training to drink the beer, and making sure I drink the beer as fast as possible. And yeah, I was wearing spikes, but there's no saying I couldn't. So that's why some of the guys are like, oh, that's why you set the... Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But there's no rules against spikes in the Boulder Beer Mile. So, and who knows, maybe the other guys were wearing them, but I think it's all about tactic. Our last one for the day. Southwestern, that's how you get over leg injuries. Trust it, and then test it. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.